Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, it's another session of the Wisdom Warriors. All right, the elite support group that we do here with the courtesy of Manor Care in their executive dining room, and I want to thank them. And I want to thank all of you that braved the rain this morning. And believe me, I came up out of south of here, and it was arc weather. So Betty, I give you a lot of credit for being here. This month is Alzheimer's and Brain Disease Month. Last night we had on Dr. Mark Brody, who was a little more technical than he needed to be. He does the Disney version of Brain, and last night he was a little more sophisticated, and I hope we didn't lose too much of the audience along the way. But nonetheless, he gave a great presentation, and next week, in plainer speak, we have a couple of the scientists from Scripps. They're going to be calling in and telling us where some of the real research is going. Just as a quick summation, I think that what Brody had to say yesterday was that there are glimmering lights at the end of the tunnel that have to do more with prevention than cure, and that they are reusing some of the drugs that didn't make it for an end cure, like solanezumab, all right, which some of you may or may not have been involved with a loved one that was on it at the time. But what they did do when they went back and did the statistics on some of the subgroups, they found that with mild cognitive impairment of the Alzheimer's type, that it had a statistical significance. So what they're trying to do is now looking at folks that are high-risk dementia patients, meaning it's come down genetically in the family, and most especially mother. There seems to be a predominant a predominant relationship between mothers that had Alzheimer's, and sons and daughters are equally as likely to get it. For a while we thought it was stronger on the female side, but according to Brody, it's pretty well balanced. And that 40% of all of us are born with the genetic predisposition to have dementia of the Alzheimer's type.
40% is a very high.
Right, but 40% of us don't get it. All right, but at birth, the genetic pathway that can cause it is in 40% of the population. All right, and so essentially what he said is we're now trying to find them a little bit earlier by looking at the group most likely to have a greater propensity to get it because of maternal Alzheimer's, and see if we can't intervene with some of the drugs that worked on mild to see if it can slow it down, possibly prevent it from happening. The only issue is we wait a long time to get conclusions, unless slowing it down will also reduce the amount of beta amyloid in the brain, or tau in the cerebral spinal fluid. The problem that he mentioned, and I'll just sum it up now, was that just because you have beta amyloid in your brain doesn't mean you have Alzheimer's. It's one of a variety of markers that may or may not be consistent with a diagnosis. And the more they study it, the less they know. But they're doing a lot of research now with that group in Columbia where all 5,000 members of the family have a unique form of Alzheimer's, but since they know they're going to get it by 25 and be dead by 40, it's a very interesting group to at least try and work out that, yeah, it's a wonderful family to be born into.
Yeah.
Terrible.
You have a bar mitzvah, you get married, and you're dead.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Don't have children.
Well, that's, I agree with you.
It's a way of stopping it in the family.
Right.
But that stops the family.
There was an interesting study, and well, first of all, let's get into somebody had, with Robin, without getting into the question that you have, because I don't think that's appropriate for
No, I
the
didn't.
table. I thought we had a great session the other Thursday night for
Yes,
dinner.
very
I'm glad
good.
everybody
Very
could
nice.
be there, except for Marion, but we gave you a takeout bag.
Funny, I didn't get it.
All right.
Somebody else
Betty
ate
ate on the
All
way.
right. So, how you doing? I know you're going away. Where are you going?
Flying up to Raleigh and then driving up to New York with my daughter. We have an unveiling on Sunday in New Jersey. So we're
Okay.
making kind of a road trip out of it. And then Sunday we're driving back to Raleigh and I'm staying there till Thursday and flying back from North Carolina, from my
Okay.
daughter's house.
And anybody else taking a vacation in the next week or two?
No.
Neither am I. But a couple weeks back, we got into the issue of the whole thing about an emotional divorce. And if you recall, that during that conversation, some very important things got said. Irving, who's still out, really came forth with not so much of an emotional divorce, but he characterized the loss of his significant other to being sent to Montana to be with the daughter since they weren't married and he couldn't follow them, and how he went into a deep set of depression to the point where he was considering suicide. And had it not been for the intervention of the VA and some good psychiatric care and some good medication, he might have acted on that. Now he's kind of back to a much more normal position. He was in the hospital earlier last week, and he's made his move into his new digs.
Right.
But I do want to pick up, because it was a good conversation, and I really would like to get it back on tape. All right, the concept of emotional divorce we had raised on the show about 4 or 5 weeks back with a woman by the name of Vicki Kind, and she was a PhD bioethicist. And so she was talking about not only I raised the emotional divorce aspect of things, she chimed in with a few things afterwards, and then she put it out on a network, social media, and it caught a real firestorm, all right, of people that said, how could you break your vows? What is this all about? Whether it was for religious reasons, ethical reasons, it really created a good bit of turmoil. And I discussed it, and then we talked about it here, and I think one of the points that we made was that I was couching it in terms of somebody with dementia, where the loss of the individual as a partner, person, etc., didn't preclude you from having some aspect of a social life, even while they may be still here, but they have made the relationship so hollow that your desire to have some company, etc., etc. I wasn't couching it in terms of necessarily sexual, but as I always say, we're all big boys and girls, and at this point in our lives we can do what we want. But it was more to say you have permission to start to fill that hollowness with other people, all right? And however you care to do that. And we came up with the thought that only because we were couching it in dementia, that don't judge me until you've walked in my shoes. This is not the sniffles. This is not an excuse to have an affair. This is a legitimate concept if you subscribe to it, because dementia can be a long-term illness, and it slowly saps everything, not only from the individual who has it, but family, spouses, significant others around them. So I want to pick the conversation up from there. And Bernice, I think that you had some very interesting things to say, only because your husband is still here, has had dementia for a while. You subscribe to the way you live your life, and right now it doesn't have, other than the family that we have created out of the support group, anybody else right now, at least that you've mentioned, to fill any of that. And I was interested to hear your perspective a little bit on how you view that.
Well, thank goodness for the support group, which really helped me a great deal. It's very, I can understand people wanting to socialize, go out on dates. I don't feel that need right now. I am keeping myself busy doing a lot of other things. But I do really miss when I go to see my husband and I show him pictures and I talk to him and tell him what's going on. That blank look is very hard. I have nobody to talk to. I have nobody to answer me.
Sure.
I get a smile, and it's very, very difficult. It really
Sure it
is.
is.
But I also feel that maybe someday I might consider having coffee with somebody or sitting around and talking. I don't see anything wrong in that. I don't feel guilty about doing something like that. The time has not come yet.
Okay.
And somebody will be very lucky if you decide
Right.
that.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Well, that we all know.
Yes.
There's
But-
okay, please.
No, but that's how I feel right now. And it's funny, where Jay is right now, they came up with an adorable idea, I think, and that's renewing your wedding vows.
Oh.
And that's going to be on the 25th of this month. And I dug out my wedding picture,
I forgot.
and I brought it in, and I said to Jay, we're going to get married again. And I don't know, sometimes, I know he understands certain things. I really feel that way because he will nod and he will smile. And I said, we're going to get married again, and I'm getting you a white shirt and a jacket, and we're going to be all dressed up. And after all these years, isn't that wonderful? I bought a ring for you, and we can exchange rings. And he kind of smiled, and I really think this is not for the residents there. This is for the spouses that come.
Yeah.
Of course. And it keeps a connectivity.
Absolutely. And what I love about this place is that they come up with all these wonderful and interesting ideas. There's always something, and what I love most about it is whatever they do includes the family.
Oh, that's nice.
It's very family oriented.
That's nice.
They did that where Norman goes to daycare at the Advent Lutheran Church, which is run by the Alzheimer's Community
Care.
In April. It happened to be the day of my surgery, so I remember the date. And Norman had told me about it a couple of weeks before. And that was prompted by one of the regulars there who was celebrating, I think, the 75th, is that possible?
Sure.
75th anniversary of
Wow.
a spouse.
Wow.
And then they opened it up, and they had, from my understanding, a rabbi, a priest,
Right.
and a reverend.
Very nice.
Right.
And they sent out literally like engraved invitations to the families.
That's great.
Right.
And-
What if you were married by a notary? I was.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, my daughter was
I actually married people. But I wanted to.
Wait, as a judge's daughter, you're entitled to marry
No, I was a
people?
notary. I
Oh.
married 3 or 4 couples. It was fun. But
Oh, Marion, did you finish the thought?
But
that
I'm
you
just
had?
saying that my problem with my husband, because I can talk to him, and several of you who were nice enough to come to my party met him on Saturday, and I talked to him several times a day, but he doesn't always remember, conversations that we had. But and he doesn't remember details of our life, and that's frustrating,
Well, that kind of harkens back, excuse me, to what Bernice said, is that she can bring the pictures in, but we all know that when we sit down with people that don't have a cognitive issue and say, boy, remember this is 1972 at camp in New Hampshire, and we went up to see the kids, or, you know, whatever the
right.
circumstances may have been, that I remember my grandmother and my father having a similar conversation that, you know, she was the matriarch, and she didn't have dementia. She might as well have the way she ruled the family, because she only heard what she wanted to hear, which is either selective deafness or dementia altogether, when she would give you that stare. But she was the keeper of the family record, and it went all the way back to the 1840s when our family came into Michigan from Canada. They were persecuted French-Canadian Jews who went to Canada and then came into to Michigan. And we made her detail it all at that time on 8-track tape or whatever it may happen to have been. We had it transcribed. And then we found on the internet a book that was written about my grandmother's family. She and her 3 sisters, and the maiden name or the family name was Blitz, and it was called The Blitz Girls, replete with old pictures and stories about, and she was the youngest of the 3, and they talk about when the baby was born. So when I hooked all that stuff up with what she had left, and before my father passed away, I made him do the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we kind of have, at least on my father's side, somewhat of a continuing record.
Nice.
My uncle, who is 93 and lives in New York, has a very expansive collection of pictures, which nobody else in the family wants but me. But the problem is, I don't know who the people are. You know, there are
right,
pictures
right.
of him in 1938 and this and that. And while they're nice to look at, who the heck are they? Are they family? Were they just 2 people that happened to have been walking by when somebody had out their Kodak Brownie camera or whatever it was? And so it's nice to have. And I think one of the great things about the computer era is the ability to take your pictures and scan them in and do a voiceover and have a family PowerPoint. Now that deviated a little bit, but I'm thinking of it in context of being able to remember and have those memories that you shared so that they can be passed on down. I mean, we really lose our history along the way of whence we came because we don't keep it the same way. And so if it isn't an app on the phone, or, you know, a book that you can still open because the pages are still there, it's tough. And so without that history, or without being able to share the history of a relationship once it's reached that point, can be very distressing, or let's say very defining as to the limitations of the relationship. Robin?
Okay, first of all, just a quickie, you all know that my husband doesn't speak at all, that he makes noises with his mouth. I'm just giving you an idea of what kind of relationship we have. Bernice is probably the best with him of everybody I know. She is the sweetest and lets him make noises on her. But,
What a unique talent.
yeah, she's so sweet. But I went the other day with my cousin. This is a cousin, but she fixed me up with my husband, and she's got a real strong feeling for him. So she goes to see him every once in a while, and we met, and we talked to Alan and sat with them and watched him eat dinner or lunch. And anyway, afterwards we were eating lunch ourselves. She asked me, am I up, if she meets somebody that she thinks would be nice for me, would I go out with them? And so I said, yeah, I would try and see what happened. Then she said, well, I should tell him you're married. I said, yeah, I think you have to. So then she said, but I don't want to tell him why you're looking to go out. I said, well, if you do not tell him about Alan, then they're going to think that I'm out there looking for sex and cheating on my husband. I didn't want that. So, I think you have to let someone know exactly the situation you're in. So anyway, that was a story with Linda, that she didn't want to let anyone know about Alan's situation, which maybe was more protective of him since
Well,
she had
maybe because the situation to explain
it's
can be
difficult.
awkward,
Yeah.
especially when it's coming from a third party,
It should come from you.
all right? You
Well,
know.
if she's gonna fix me up, I don't want her to fix me up and say she's married, but not, you know, I mean.
Either tell the
have to
whole
tell-
story or don't tell
tell
anything.
anything.
Right.
Or just simply say, there's somebody
Have a friend.
you'd
It's
like
honest.
to, you might like to meet,
Yeah.
all right? And
I don't know if it'll happen or not, but she's
Well-
out there and
she-
Scouting for
she's
you.
single.
Okay.
I think that's very important from the beginning, to know
Honesty.
exactly, yes, for
Honesty.
you
I
to
think
be,
so too.
you would
Yes.
feel better, and you have to clarify your relationship, no matter how small or wherever it goes. That, it seems to me, has to be mentioned immediately.
Yes.
I agree, and I also feel that if I go out with someone, I don't want them to think that we're gonna jump into bed.
That's
because
what
we
I
went
mean.
Well,
we went
Take your
out.
time, take your time, don't jump.
and walk.
And I think that is a big part of what the word emotional divorce means. I mean, it's difficult to put the word, it's more like there's a lack of kind of personal human contact, all right, that you've lost as a result of somebody with a degenerative cognitive brain issue, all right? And in looking for somebody to just share some of your time with, all right? I mean, I agree with Betty. It has to be at least put in context so that
Definitely.
nobody's running
I
under
agree.
any
Right.
false conceptions. And I'm not saying whether or not somebody's ready to jump in bed. I always say, you don't need anybody's permission to do that, but we're talking about a concept of filling that gap while that person is still alive. Obviously, once they pass, you're a widow or widower, and you're free to
It's okay,
pursue,
yeah.
you know, what you wish and how you wish. But it always seemed to me that it left a lot of people at the end of the day leaving the dementia facility with a real half-empty glass. And, you know, not to be able to go, like I said, have a pizza, a cup of coffee, get on the phone and share some of the day's good, bad, and the ugly.
I think though, it should come from you, not from your cousin. In other words, if you set up a coffee date, he doesn't have to know before you have a cup of coffee what your circumstances are. But you could sit together, and as you talk,
Right.
you divulge
Right.
the
And
situation
if
rather than
this-
her.
Excuse me.
Well, I don't know if
If
it's
this
everything.
person doesn't accept what you're telling him from the beginning, he's not the right person.
Oh,
Well, he's not the
absolutely.
right person
you.
for now.
I
And
think
that's
that,
what
yeah,
I
Right.
mean.
yeah.
And some people may have very strong feelings about that. You may find a kindred spirit who has a wife in the same position as you have a
That's
husband
true.
and
Yeah, that's
said,
true. Right.
we can kind of be companions in a shared experience.
Right.
All right, if that's a better way of putting it. But I think in any relationship, honesty is a very important ingredient.
Oh,
all right?
yes.
But I don't think you
It's the only
have
way
to
to go.
put a sign on your forehead as you walk in to have a cup of coffee and say, my husband has Alzheimer's and that's why I'm
All
here.
right,
Okay.
You know,
Honesty in any marriage
yes, anything.
is uppermost first.
Oh, I never
honesty.
questioned that I shouldn't be honest, believe me, I
Okay.
am. But I also have to say, that all along with this, that in my heart, I don't know what I would really do if it comes to the point where someone actually said, would you
Okay.
like to meet somebody? So, you know, I think I would, but I'm not sure
Well,
how.
You will know.
I have
at
not
the-
gone out with people.
all right, but if it had a tail on it, would you like to meet somebody for a cup of coffee and have a chat?
Maybe, I
I mean,
don't
does
know
that sanitize it a little
She's
bit
not
more?
sure.
You know, as opposed to
She's
I'm
just.
not really sure, I'm sort of
Robin,
wavering.
you will know.
Yes.
Right.
When the time
If it
comes.
comes. yes.
Exactly.
I know a couple, and I've kind of lost touch with them, but his wife was in a facility for many years with dementia. And when I met him, he was already with this woman, Gail. They had been together 3 or 4 years at this point, and I knew them at least another 6 or 7. So they're together a minimum of 10, 12 years, while his wife is in a facility, not knowing who he is, completely oblivious to the world. And I think about why should he have, I don't want to use the word wasted, but, not lived his life for 12 years when he had a happy relationship with Gail, and they were a couple, and they had a social life, and they could go on vacations, and they could travel, and they could live a life like a normal couple.
Mhm.
And I was very glad of the situation, and it was at the point where his whole family was fine with her, they loved her, and she was a member of the family at this point.
Mhm.
And even though his wife was still alive,
Right.
it's just, he went to the home to see her, and so did Gail. Not every day, obviously,
Right.
but you accepted after so many years, he had to go on and live a life, and I was very
Wow.
pleased
Right.
for their
It's a
relationship.
long time.
Well, without naming any names, we know that we have somebody within our support group that has gone down
Yeah.
that exact set of circumstances. Gentleman's wife is in a dementia facility. Her dementia is advancing. A third party introduced them for a cup of coffee or whatever, and they became an item, a couple, and they're doing exactly what you talk about. All right, they're traveling, they're enjoying and yet she is, for all intents and purposes, very devoted to the wife and goes out of her way, I think, to engage her while she's at the facility to the extent that she can. And when I look at it, and knowing the male party that's involved in this, and he may see this at some point in time, so I would say it to his face, I think they have a great relationship, but I think that Lynn really keeps him propped up. I
Yes,
think he
yes,
has every tendency to go right back to the same trepidatious individual who couldn't make up his mind every time they would say, we have a bed available, to move on and move in, because I always feel that there is still with him an anger that all of this happened. And
I think we all have that.
I understand that, and we've heard people in our support groups talk about, if you recall, some very early on that said, I'm angry.
Yes.
And we said, what are you angry at? I'm angry at my husband for getting the disease.
We had that not too long ago.
Right, and so, and I think at the time we said that she was saddled with all of the responsibilities that she was unprepared to assume, practically as well as emotionally. And if you recall, I said to her, if he'd had cancer and could still engage in conversation and do the things, would you be as angry for him having a different kind of a terminal illness? And I think her answer was no. She resented the fact that it came on and left her very unprepared. It's kind of like he may not have recognized it, that it was coming, but he didn't go through some of those things like, here's how you pay the bills. Here's where you find this. Here's where you find that. I'm doing it right now. Not because I'm planning on leaving, but I never know. But for the purpose of my wife really doesn't understand how the bills get paid, when they get paid, where are things, and so I'm making up a list with the passwords. I'm making 3 copies and I'm not keeping it on the computer. All right, they're on a flash drive, and I'm starting to update them as we go along, because I don't want to, if I get hit by the bus leaving today, leave her unprepared. And I don't think it's any different than having a plan. And part of the plan is try not to leave your wife's, husband's significant other wondering what it was you did all those years in terms of helping to run the family while they did their thing. And you hear it the other way. There was a very interesting study, came out a couple of days ago, and I brought it with me, and they were talking about there's almost an equal number, and I'm switching gears, I'll go back to the other in a moment, but they were talking about husbands as caregivers, because we saw our statistics last night from the show, from last week's show, and we're just about 51-49 women, men.
Really?
Okay? And so, because the workplace is getting older, retirement age has jumped from 57 to 62, and I would suggest that within the next couple of years, it's going to be 63, 64, 65, because people need to stay in the workplace now that they've realized that they may not be as financially and otherwise prepared, that they need the engagement, not only for dollar purposes, but socially and for an identity, especially with men who view themselves, as the, who are you? Well, I'm the vice president of the job.
Right.
And so that loss of identity, just because you hit a certain age, is starting to get blurred in the workplace. And we discussed last night, just very briefly, the predicament that businesses are having in allowing, especially men, to become more identified with caregiving, because they are the ones, as well as women, who historically by gender have had that role and are increasingly in the workplace, but they used to hit the ceiling because it was pregnancy.
Yeah.
All right, and well, if I train you, you're going to get pregnant and you're going to go home and have babies. It was okay, but I still have to earn a living the other 39 years of my life after I have 2 kids. And so it was, a very stereotypical response. It said, oh, you're a woman, you'll have babies. All right, oh, you're a caregiver? Well, you can't give us a full day's worth of work. Well, I could if you gave me the right tools to be a caregiver and still work in the workplace. And I was making the point the other day that, let's say you're the general manager of Publix, which is a supermarket here in Florida. Could you telecommute? No, I don't think so. You have a workforce that you have to do. Will flex time, come in a little early, leave a little later, really make a difference? Can you always schedule that doctor appointment, at 9 in the morning or at 4:30 in the afternoon? And I think we've gotten into too many cliches in the workplace about what it is that caregivers can and cannot do, and they have been heavily ostracized for it. Caregivers stay under the radar for fear of losing their jobs, losing promotion, being viewed as a worker that isn't giving 100% of their time. And if you're going to make that assumption, then draw them out and say, hey, we can help. Would a support group at lunchtime help? Would being able to contact somebody besides a geriatric case manager and have referrals to nursing homes and assisted living that you don't even know what you need them for? And having been in this industry a long time, that's still the state of the art. If you have serious caregiving issues, you will not get them readily addressed. Without saying anything about me, but the kinds of caregiver groups that I run and that you people have been a part of answer questions as opposed to trying to heal caregivers. All right, that's a point I've always made. And it's practical problem solving. And when you're in the midst of a mess, your view on things is not always clear as it could be. So anyway, the study which I have in here talks about men, men as caregivers, and that they're less reluctant, or they're more reluctant to reach for help. All right, they're going to figure it out themselves, just like I don't need to stop at the gas station, I'll figure out how to get to Peoria from here. Or, don't give me the directions for the erector set, I can put it together blindfolded. Harv, how do you feel about that? Do you, as a caregiver, you come to the group, all right? Do you come because you feel it gives you support and information? Do you come because it's the thing to do? How do you position yourself as a male attendee of a support group?
I come here because it gives me support, and that's what the group is for. And without this group, I don't know if I would I just don't know where I would be today, because they have been a big help to me. I don't talk much, but I listen a lot. And I became a caregiver because I felt that this is what I had to do and this is what I wanted to do for my wife.
Mhm.
And now she's in a facility. It will be 7 weeks tomorrow. And we're both going through a big adjustment period, and it's tough. But without this group, I don't think I would.
You were very hesitant to put her in.
Very hesitant to put her in.
In retrospect,
Yes.
how do you
yes.
feel?
She's where she needs to be,
Okay.
and
Which is helping you get to where you need to be.
yeah, it's helping me a lot.
That's what this group is all about, support groups. Because people come in, excuse me, they don't know what to do. They really don't know what to do. To them, it's
Well, that's where I
a
was.
brand new topic, and it's a very heartbreaking topic. But now when you come in, you have learned, obviously, from others around you, what to expect
Exactly.
and how to handle it.
Exactly.
And you're very fortunate in that way. Most people are very fortunate to be in the group here because that's exactly what they're getting, support. Support.
I don't know if you remember the first time I came into the group, and I was asked by David why I'm here, and I said, I don't know why I'm here, because I don't.
And at
I'm
that
not
point, your
aware-
wife was high functioning,
Yes.
and you had all of the denial walls up.
That's right, that's right. But as time went on, and I kept hearing what was coming down the road, it came. And,
Right, yeah.
and here I
And
am.
so at
reality.
least it gave you a greater awareness.
Did-
You know,
I'm amazed at how many men actually are in this group. You expect the support group to be like, well, women, and you come into, and we're not quite 50-50, but we've got a large number of men in the
Yes.
group,
Well,
which is really very
If you go
good.
to homes and any of these facilities I've been at, it's 70% women there. No, the mayor, they outnumber.
You mean
the ma-
residents?
Residents.
even as far as residents.
Yeah, as
Right.
far as
So what happens
residents.
to the men who were,
Then that's just it,
Bachelor.
what happens to the men who are bachelors. As David said, there's no courses given on caregiving, so where do you get that information? I think David probably gives more information out to the world.
Than anybody.
Than anybody.
Right.
Right.
And
And I
they're
went-
lucky that he's been able to transmit this as well as he has.
Exactly.
David, you said something that I never put into words, but everyone talks about how special our support group is. And why is it special? And I went to other support groups, and what you did was you heard war stories and people trying to heal, or not even listening because they're busy thinking about their war story. And you said that you want to answer questions rather than heal people. You're not going to tell them what to do, but you're going to explain what's going on. And I think that makes this group different. Everybody here, they might have an answer to a problem, or they can tell you how they went through it, but also you are
The most knowledgeable.
The
you are answering
facilitator.
questions.
That's right.
And I think that makes it different than the typical
Well,
support
Not
group.
only answering questions, but giving out important
And giving
Information,
and
yes,
where we
key
can
word.
go and how to find out about
Right,
everything.
right.
And that we thank you for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You bring out,
You know,
You're not looking for it, but the fact of the
Right.
matter is that you do help everyone so.
you
Right.
mentioned subjects that are relevant to everybody. Each person here has different situations, as you've mentioned
They're all
many
fingerprints,
times.
right.
However, you elicit all these questions that are within each one of us, and the answers come out not only from you, but from everybody else. It's a different source of information.
And I want to make a point for the benefit of those that will see this tape. I keep calling it tape, Freddie, I don't know what to call it, the digital record. But the point is the following. People say, well, you know, I'm only 55, I'm only 48. and you have a group of people sitting in front of you that are obviously from their late 60s to wherever, myself included. How does that give us, the younger person, the perspective on what we have to do? And I would say that one of the reasons that I think this group and why we film it, I mean, obviously I do a number of groups, but this is the one that I've chosen, is because no matter what age you are, the information that we discuss is virtually ageless. All right? It may not be a spouse to a daughter for a mother, but the issues are very much the same to a point. Yes, they may still have children at home. They may be having spousal issues. It may be that mom conflicts with their entire social life and who they are and how they identify themselves. But it's nothing that this group hasn't gone through in its own way. And so when I ask you to tell your stories and to give your perspective, it's because there is so much accumulated knowledge, and caregiving really is, to use the word, agnostic. It doesn't care how old you are, how old the person you're caring for, what the disease is, how much money you have, whatever. Those are issues that you have to work with as a caregiver in order to be able to have some effective control over yourself and what you want to do for that individual. For instance, and just as a quick aside, I had a phone call last night at 11 that came back again at 6:30 this morning. It's a gentleman that flew into New York, from New York. His father is 89 years old. They've had him in a nursing home for 7 years on Medicaid, and he's on all kinds of artificial feeding, artificial get him to move his bowels, et cetera, et cetera. The doctor that is the one in charge who is seeing him at the hospital at the nursing home is one of, and he will not write for hospice.
Why?
Don't know, couldn't get into all of those facts, all right? And you can presume anything nefarious that you want to, but they've had this man living artificially for a while.
Oh my God.
A week ago, he was competent enough to sign a document for them, and 5 days ago, he was incompetent to sign a healthcare advance directive for the son that came down to try and do something. I said, you can't have it both ways in a week. And he was smart. When he did his, he filmed it. All right? And I told him to take it to an attorney. They did have, the paralegal come who had prepared the HCAD, but I wanted an attorney to look at it to see whether he felt the capacity was still there, so that we didn't get in the argument, because the attorney for the nursing home wanted to go and get an emergency temporary guardianship so they could maintain control over him.
Oh my God.
And so my suggestion to him this morning was, because he would like to move him to a local Miami hospital, bring in hospice, knowing that they will, because the father has clearly expressed, I don't want this anymore. They're not listening to him. In one breath he's competent, in the next breath he isn't. And so what I said to him this morning was, call hospice, and if they don't let hospice in for an evaluation, all right, you let me know. Because if you have to, and they say it's not medically necessary to call 911, you have his HCAT, this Healthcare Advance Directive, call a private ambulance service, take him to the hospital, have hospice evaluate him, and it sounds like from the condition there wouldn't be a doctor in the ER that wouldn't say this person needs to go to hospice, and they happen to have in-house hospice at this facility. But the nursing home has been running so much interference because this is a legacy. This person has been there, artificially kept alive, all right, and collecting from Medicare and Medicaid.
I was
Every
gonna
week.
say-
That's-
Mike.
I was just
Yeah.
All right, so
asking that
the
question.
point, the only reason that I'm saying this is a very smart man. He runs a big company in New York. He went to law school, all right? But he's enmeshed with his father in an emotional scenario mixed in with the politics of the nursing home, the lack of immediate familiarity with hospice,
Yeah.
the alternatives that he may have.
He's getting lost.
Yeah.
But thank goodness he can talk to
Well, yes, an attorney in New York sent them to me, all
Good.
right? But I don't say that for any other reason, but you can be as smart as hell,
you. Yeah.
all right? And you can be the wisest person around. But if it's not your skill set, if you haven't been down this path, if you have not sat, I think that any one of you could go and facilitate a support group, all right? I think that you have heard and listened and been a part of. You may not have every little piece of all of the
Of the
data,
puzzle.
but you have enough to steer the ship. And in many, many places, they don't even have that. All right, so I think when I call you my wisdom warriors, I say it very, very realistically because you have learned and participated over an extended period of time. Here's somebody that was just dropped into the pot, within the last 24 hours, and he's trying to figure out against a hostile system what he can do because he sees that his father has said to him,
That's awful.
I don't want this. Get
Right.
me out
Yeah.
of this situation.
Yeah.
And uniquely, they're blocking hospice because hospice, if accepted, would take those tubes out. And we'd be dealing
Yes.
with a 5 or a 7, whatever
Right.
the count would be until the man finally,
Passes out.
with the
Yeah.
dignity that he's
Dignity.
entitled
And
to.
without the pain, because
Yes.
those tubes are.
Not only that, infections and this and that,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it is a blight
what end?
on the
To
industry
what end?
when I hear stories like that.
Are they afraid of being
The
sued?
story this week about Casey Kasem made national headlines.
Yes.
Where you all know the
With his wife.
details.
Yeah.
The difference between children from his first marriage, who wanted to honor and have a dignified end, and his second wife of many, many years who was keeping him alive artificially, and legally had to get involved, and when presented with the medical data, saying that it was causing him pain to be artificially fed and nurtured, voted with the daughter, supported the daughter, and allowed him to die in a matter of days. So things are coming to national attention. The second thing I wanted to say, I don't know if anyone saw it, I think it was on CBS This Morning last Sunday, a story about B. Smith, the former model and restaurateur
Right.
and icon.
In New York.
Right,
Never heard
yeah.
of it.
She was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's at age, I think, 54. Right. And they decided to make it public to share information and to lift some of the dark veil. And a hugely successful woman, and didn't know what it was for a long time until it was finally diagnosed, I think, with the PET scan. So there are stories every day I hear, not every day, but more and
pretty
more,
much.
we hear stories. And just the other day I heard something about the percentage of caregivers, which I think vastly underestimated compared to what you've told us, David, the number of people who are caregivers.
Well,
And they use that term caretakers, which
Right.
I
Oh.
object to.
I object to it too, and I have for a long time, and I've also, as you may have heard I also object to the word informal. There's nothing informal about what you do. You're simply unpaid.
Yeah.
You have some of the toughest jobs imaginable, and the clinical healthcare system, if they had to do what you do day in and day out,
How do they categorize it informal? Where does that come
formal
from?
means you're paid. You come from a home health care.
don't have a
aid.
uniform.
You're a
Oh,
nurse,
oh.
you're an LPN.
Illegal.
Well,
Kind of.
let's just say you earn an income from
Oh,
it, all right,
okay.
as opposed to tag you're it, all right? And the point you made about taking the mystery away from it, we had somebody in the group for a very long time, and occasionally she comes back, Rivian. Rivian did the same thing when they were living in assisted living before her husband went in a facility. She went and told everybody in the place, my husband has Alzheimer's. He may forget certain things, he may, stumble over issues, etc., but she demystified the process and allowed him to maintain his dignity until it had reached a point where he did need to go into a facility. But everybody knew it. Nobody shied away like it was some kind of an infection. If anything, they were more understanding. Whether they knew every little bit that they were supposed to was unimportant. But she went right up front and said, I'm going to take the mystery out of why, if you ask my husband something and he doesn't remember, or he can't recall your name, or he doesn't remember your face, please don't ostracize him for that, because he has Alzheimer's.
How did the staff react to her?
It wasn't
doing
staff,
this?
it was everybody in the
Right.
place.
It was
Yeah,
very-
right.
They embraced it.
I understand that, but when she made it public, so to speak,
Right.
how did the officers, yeah.
You
the
mean,
peop-
how did the facility
Yes,
respond?
yes,
The
to her
facility
reaction.
responded not inappropriately. They said, you know what, and they went back to her and said, in all honesty, we wish everybody
Oh,
that was hiding
Yes.
dementia and independent living,
That was the
all right,
correct-
would be candid enough to come forward and say so, so that the
They can handle
population
it.
here and everybody can deal with it
Yes.
in a dignified and a proper manner. They didn't ask to get this disease, they got it, all right? And it has a whole host of things that happen as a result. If people are aware, sure, there are people that are cruel and, don't give a damn, but the preponderance of people, especially in a situation like a continuing care retirement community, they don't need somebody to come up eventually and say, my loved one has Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. They can see it for themselves. But to take it off the table right from the beginning, I think allows
Right.
everybody to have a calmer existence and not play a game.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's very important. All right, I think the same honesty that we were just talking about, and whether you wanted to go out and have a cup of coffee, I think honesty when it comes to
Yes.
these kinds of things.
Most of them.
The only time I've ever seen honesty compromised is when somebody may have a terribly terminal illness and the family gets all shook up about telling them about it. Sam would be better off not knowing about it. Mary, shouldn't know, let her have her last X days. But she knows she's gone through, or he's gone through, all this testing and all the rest of it, and all of a sudden somebody didn't come out with an answer. Well, we're going to do more testing, or we're going to put you on this or that or the other thing. I mean, they're not stupid.
I don't think that's as common today as it used to be.
Well, I see it happen, and people come to me and they say, should I tell them?
No.
And I said, yes, but you don't have to go in like the old singing telegram.
Yeah.
Ha, you
like-
have.
Like thunder.
Yeah, exactly. There are ways to handle it. And I think that ultimately everybody's looking for the same thing: independence, dignity, and a quality of life. And no matter what form or shape that takes, we're all entitled to it.
Yes.
All right? And so going back to this group, I think you have come to recognize the shared reason that you all have in trying to maintain your own independence, your own dignity, your own quality of life. And you have come together as a family. And sitting around this table, you are a family for the world, whether you recognize it or not, in speaking the wisdom and the truth of what you know to be the case because you've lived it, you've seen it, you've heard it, and you respond to it and articulate it very, very well. Very few people anywhere in this country, anywhere in this world, have the benefit of a collaborative wisdom that you people have. Now, maybe a little more focused at times on dementia, but not everybody here had dementia. But you're smart, and you know how to use those smarts. And that's why when we meet, I so appreciate, even though at times I'm dominating it with my conversation, but I'm trying to make a point for the camera, that what comes out of wise people is wisdom. And it doesn't come out of a book. It comes out of experience. It comes out of the interplay of exactly what you said. I walked into the group and I didn't know why I was there. Well, now not only do you know why you were there, and the group and everybody else helped to lead you to certain solutions for the moment, and now you're here both to gain for yourself, but also to participate in the needs of everybody else, whether they're on that camera or they're sitting around this table. Eleanor.
I want to say that I was in denial for 2 years about Buddy's condition. Everyone else realized it but me. And it was my daughter who went on the computer and checked out about dementia and Alzheimer's. She also was the one who got me to come to the group. She was given about 4 or 5 places to go. She was very smart when she left me. She says, I'm leaving you this list. I would like you to look into going because I think you need help. Yeah, okay, leave the list. I looked at it and I chose where you originally were. I don't know why I chose that. There were others closer. But that was the best thing for me because I was in denial. And I didn't say much at first. And I listened. And everything that everyone around was saying, eventually, it came out with Buddy. And when I had to put him into a facility, it was my kids who did it because they saw what it was doing to me. I still was in denial. I would not tell him what his real problem was. He kept asking, there's something wrong with me. What is it? And I only said it was his diabetes, his heart. I could not bring myself to use the word dementia to him, which may have made it harder for him, knowing.
For you, you were keeping a secret.
Yes, and it did take a toll. But listening to the group, I learned not only the comfort it gave me, but the knowledge that when I was faced with some of the things that people had said, I looked back and I said, oh, so-and-so said this is how they handled it. I learned to be a liar because of not wanting to tell him the truth. If I was going someplace, it was a little white lie.
Which is always acceptable.
Which I learned from this group. Without the group, I don't think I would have gotten as far as I have.
Sure.
Everyone was there for me while I was going through it. After he passed away, which will be a year and another week, and even my illnesses. This group has given me so much strength that I don't think I can go without it. It really killed me not being here for 5 months
You missed it.
because of the support. But I still got it. The people that called me, that came to visit me.
You got the teddy bear.
Yes, I did. But to the end, Buddy realized I had spoken to you, we got hospice. That was the best thing to do. Because he begged one day to the nurse, why don't you let me go? I've had it. I don't like this life. And it hit me and my daughter at that moment, what he was trying to tell us. and they
And
brought
then
in
after that,
hospice.
you never had to say a thing, and he knew it all along. The only thing he was asking for was validation.
Right. So-
Buddy was not dumb,
No,
all right?
no.
He just wanted a name.
And when hospice came in and they made him very comfortable, it was our wishes anyway. That's what we had written a long time ago. It was the most peaceful week that we had with him. That he went out in dignity, and it was his wish, because he even told the hospice nurse, "Do you want me to give you a punch in the face?" And she said, "Not really." "Well, why don't you understand? I do not want any more medicine. It's not helping me. Just let me go."
And on that note, I don't think anything else for this particular session can be said. I think that the way you have expressed yourselves today, the information that you have passed around in terms of what a support group means, forget whether I'm the facilitator or not. This is not about me, it's about you. And I truly mean